Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my October 2022 webinar. This one's called Look Both Ways, subtitle, Making the Most of the Path You've Been Given or Chosen. I've touched on this topic before, but I wanted to elaborate some more because I saw another movie on looking both on the topic of being present where you are and then dealing with that, and the concept of parallel universes. So I'll get to that in a minute, but I'd like now to plunge ahead with basically what we're talking about here. Long ago, Byron Katie wrote a book called The Work, and I think she wrote another one called Loving What Is, and that theme has stuck with me throughout my alternative healing career. What it means is that we should love what we're dealing with, what our life is, rather than the what ifs. And she was counseling particularly against wallowing in the what ifs. What if I'd chosen differently? What if fate had given me something different? Thinking about those things isn't productive, isn't useful. It doesn't move us forward. We can fantasize about different paths or wish that we had chosen differently if it was a choice that we made at some point. But the only thing that works when we're not able to access divine guidance, and I'll come back to that in a second, is to choose the next right thing. And the next right thing is a phrase from Frozen. I think it's Frozen 2, the Disney movie, which is a kid's movie, but it's got some really mature stuff in it. That's, as usual in Disney, is kind of subtly thrown in to keep the adults engaged. We talked before about accessing divine guidance, and that's a really important thing, and how to know when what we're sensing or hearing or feeling or thinking is really representative of divine guidance, or whether it's just noise in our circuits. And so I won't go back over that, but it is available to you on YouTube in my list of things, list of videos of previous webinars. So you can pick up the idea of, again, if you want to review it or see it for the first time, the concept of divine guidance. But most of us, at times at least, if not much of the time, tend to feel that that guidance, which we might be willing to believe is there, isn't clear in our awareness. We're not sure just exactly what nature wants or requires of us at a particular time. And so we're left to muddle through. And as it says in Frozen, choose the next right thing. The way that's actually presented in the movie is, if you can't see the future, then you choose, which means a long-term path, then you choose the next right thing. You make an intelligent decision about what looks like what you should be doing next to move you along in your evolutionary journey. So what to do? What to do when we feel unhappy about our situation? Or perhaps we're wondering if we made some poor decision along the way. What if I had chosen differently? And all of these things require that we consider possibilities that are different than the current ones. And it turns out that in the world of quantum physics, as well as in the world of energy healing, there is a concept which we call parallel universes. And the concept of parallel universes is, on the one hand, quite simple, and yet very profound, and has layers of complexity to it that can be really, really quite fascinating. Now, in the movie Sliding Doors, which I had covered previously, there was this idea that a woman runs to get on a subway train. And then it considers what would happen if she gets onto the train, beats the sliding doors, or doesn't get on the train. The doors close in front of her. And so what you follow through the movie, then back and forth, are the two different lives she would have lived if she gone one way, made it on the train, or the other way, didn't make it on the train. And many different things happen to her in the different lives. They're really quite different. Pardon me. But eventually, I'm just going to mute for a second so I can clear my throat. And eventually, in that story, the two universes converge and a common, broader understanding of her life situation and how to deal with it emerges. Now, in the movie Look Both Ways, which I just saw recently on Netflix, the storyline is similar, and yet presents something a little bit differently. And the idea is a woman has had a one-night stand. And so the story starts, in a sense, with her doing a pregnancy test. I think she actually does 2 or 3 of them at once. And because she just wants to be sure. So she uses different brands of test kit. And lo and behold, she either is or is not pregnant. And the movie proceeds then. What's her life like if she is pregnant? What's her life if she's not pregnant? And the lives are very, very different. And instead of converging in the way that they do in Sliding Doors, they eventually converge by coming back to a starting point. It's 2 identities. One identity is the one that got pregnant, and the other one is the one that didn't. And the main point of the thing is that in coming back to that origin, and this is in the movie, mind you, it's not that we have to come back to the origin, but in the movie, they use it as a construct, that she finds satisfaction in both of her lives. Yes, some of her goals have changed if she got pregnant as compared to if she didn't get pregnant, but she finds that both lives are fulfilling and that she can now move forward with each of them, whichever one she identifies with at the moment. Now, the concept of parallel universes, to me, is really fascinating because what it says is we exist in multiple planes of existence. We exist in multiple universes. And this is compatible with quantum physics that says that universes bubble up all the time. And so the idea is that when we make a decision or we come to a fork in the road in our life, we can go one way or another, maybe even multiple possibilities, but typically it's one way or another. And that when we do that, what we call our reality, that is the one we identify with, it has a certain energy. But if we had chosen the other way, then that has an energy too, which exists in a parallel universe and gets played out in its own way. And where it becomes very useful for me is in situations either where a person is unhappy with what's going on in their life, or particularly if there's like a chronic illness, a serious illness like cancer or inflammatory disease, some other kind of serious illness, autoimmune disease, when I say inflammatory. And so the idea of finding in a parallel universe a state where we are not sick and bringing that energy into this life can be very, very valuable. Now, in order to successfully do that, we often have to clear away the hidden expectation, which is almost like a desire that we have this problem in this life. It's like we're destined to have it, and we believe that we're destined to have it, that we deserve it, that it's some kind of payment, for a transgression, something we did wrong, or whatever the karmic thing may be. So we often have to clear away any obstacle to actually living a healthy life. And then with that door open, you might say, with having cleared that, then it becomes possible to introduce the energy of a parallel universe in which we are not sick. I ran into a very interesting situation that I want to tell you about. This was a few years ago now. I was attending a webinar in matrix energetics and talking to the woman who teaches on that program. There's a man and a woman. It's the woman I was talking to, Melissa Joy. And she was suggesting that one of the techniques you can use in healing is to go back in time and pick up the energy when the person wasn't sick. And I said, I'm not sure how effective that may be. It may be effective in the short run because you are bringing in a, quote, healthy energy. But that energy, I suggested, has contained within it the seed of illness, because that's what you're destined to live in this universe. And so I said, I think it's a better concept is to go, clear the path and then go to a parallel universe and bring that energy into this person's life so that they know, so they feel, they live that change. And that by doing that, oftentimes a miraculous healing can take place, often in a very short time. We didn't resolve that conversation, that issue in that conversation. But it was a very interesting one to consider. And I always consider when I'm working with someone, do I just step back and pick up a time when they were healthy, or do I go to a parallel universe? My preference is to use a parallel universe after clearing out whatever is holding them in the present universe, holding them in the present state of ill health. So this is, I find, to be a really fascinating set of possibilities. The way that's done is actually fairly simple, and that is that I simply have to find which parallel universe holds the information, the energy that is going to be useful in this situation. And I've learned very simple ways of finding that. And then just bringing that energy in, just finding that energy, holding it in my awareness, and bringing that energy into the present universe, the one we think we're living in. So it really is a fairly straightforward and quick way to do things. And it can be quite miraculous. It's really striking what can happen when you do that, because the person all of a sudden feels, oh, it's different. So you have to get them to that point where they're open to feeling different. And then when you do the technique to bring in the parallel universe, the energy of that information, then they go like, oh, I'm well. This can occur spontaneously in people, for instance, who have a life-threatening emergency like a heart attack and survive it. And I've actually heard of several cases of this, which were very beautiful. I mean, they're wonderful stories to hear. And one of my favorites was someone who I heard the story from another person who's close to them, that they had always been a kind of domineering person, I guess is the right word to say, particularly as a parent. But it was, they were like the authority, and it was kind of their cultural understanding that that's how you were supposed to be. So changing them was not really something that could have been done in the usual, by discussion or by even working with the energy. And they just weren't open to it. But they had a heart attack. And that heart attack, of course, was an existential threat and was perceived as such as they restarted to recover from it. And the personality completely changed. because they switched from being in control to enjoying what they had, loving what is, being present with what they had. And it was such a radical transformation that the spouse involved made a comment that hardly know this person. I don't know this now very kind, open-hearted, generous person who really cares about other people. That part had always been there, but it was covered up or shaped in a particular way due to cultural expectations and family history. But the heart attack changed everything. And now they valued life, they valued their relationships, particularly with the family. And they got really mellow and, were able to, as I heard the story, one of the ways this came out was family would get together and play board games and card games periodically, fairly often actually. And instead of always having to try to win, they became much more relaxed about winning and losing because they realized it didn't matter. It didn't matter if they won or lost one of these family games. They had nothing to prove. And so just the social event became the focus of that. It's just a shift in attention, but it was brought about by the heart attack. But I think it's a marvelous example of how an energy can change when a different energy is introduced and is done so in a way or when the person is receptive. In this case, it was the heart attack that made them receptive. In my work, it's clearing away the energies of expectation and persecution and all the other negative things that people tend to carry with them, including a lot of guilt and shame. So very beautiful situations. And so when I work, I often draw on that possibility of that we exist in parallel universes, find the energy that we need, which is useful, and then introduce that energy. It's almost like an injection. It's almost like put it in as a, you can think of it as like putting a chip into a machine or information on a thumb drive or something, into your computer, and then you get that. So those two movies, very, very helpful concepts. I thought both of them were very entertaining as movies, but fascinating because of this concept of parallel universes, although they don't explicitly say that. So the first one was Sliding Doors, which was at least a decade old now, maybe more. Very charming story. And then Look Both Ways. And the ending of Look Both Ways, which I will not tell you, is really masterful because you're looking at this complicated situation. Oh my goodness, what if I had done this or done that? And then you find the response to that. One of the folks here is sharing a similar story with their grandmother, who he says fell and broke a hip, and turned to becoming sweet and appreciative. It's not the approach I like to recommend, but it's fun to contemplate these stories, and there are many such stories. So I'm going to see if there are any other questions or comments. You can put them in the chat. And then we can wrap up this presentation. I think I hope I've presented it clearly enough. And why this work is both very, very valuable and quite fascinating to explore. Okay, I'm going to end the recording there.